Hello, leaders of the world. Welcome to Spread Love in Organizations, a podcast for purpose-driven healthcare leaders striving to make life better around the world by leading their teams with genuine care, servant leadership, and love. I'm Naji, your host, joined today by Dorota McKay, a creative problem solver with a passion for finance and personal development. Dorota is currently a vice president, controller, and chief accounting officer for Vapotherm, a publicly traded medtech company that develops innovative, comfortable, non-invasive technologies for respiratory support of patients with chronic and acute breathing disorders. Dorota holds active CPA, CMA, and CFE designations, and prior to joining Vapotherm, she was a controller for Decibel Therapeutics and a finance director at Oxford Immunotech. She is also corporate trainer and coach certified in Canfield methodology and a certified culture transformation tools practitioner with the Barrett Values Center. Dorota, it's a pleasure to have you with me today.
Thanks, Naji. It's great to be here.
Let's start first with your personal story. What brought you to accounting, specifically in healthcare, and what's the story behind the great leader you became today?
Yeah, so it wasn't a straight path for me. And I think an important part of my identity is being an immigrant. I was born in communist Poland under martial law, and I lived in communist Poland until the age of 7. That's when communism fell. And I still remember that moment. Actually, it was extremely important for us, and I remember the shortages of those years. And I remember our neighbors actually hiding in our apartment from the militia. So was definitely a very different reality from where I live today. And my parents were both teachers when I was growing up in Poland. My dad is a linguistics professor, and my mom was a high school teacher. And so when I grew up, I decided to follow in their footsteps and also become a teacher myself. And I studied English studies, and I got a master's in American literature and American studies. My master's was on virtual and real in American science fiction. So very different from what I do now. And after graduating from a university in Poland, I decided to pursue doctoral studies. So I became an academic teacher, and I was also an exchange student in the summer. That's how I ended up meeting my husband in Maine, of all places. And after a couple of years, we decided to get married, and I moved to join him in the United States. And I continued to work on my doctoral thesis remotely. But in 2009, during the Great Recession, my husband lost his job, and he worked for a nonprofit on the coast of Maine that provided us with our only source of income and our source of housing. So when he lost the job, we basically ended up with nothing. And that was a pretty difficult time in my life. So I was new to the country. I didn't have a community. I didn't have a lot of friends. I didn't have a job. I was working on a doctoral thesis remotely. And I remember having a very difficult time just adjusting. One day I ended up walking down the beach and just crying. I was feeling very miserable and and very, very down. And as I was walking down the beach, I tripped and I fell head first or face first into the sand. And as I was on the ground, I saw this little piece of sea glass on the ground, and it was just beautiful and very blue and this like colorful thing in this very, very depressing reality. And it allowed me to just take a pause and think to myself that in every hard situation there was something positive. And I got up and I decided to really change things. So the transformation just took place in that very moment. And so I decided I was going to quit my doctoral studies, do something different to better adjust to the reality and help my family become financially independent and successful. So what ended up doing is I quit the doctoral program, and I went and got a job as a waitress at a local Olive Garden restaurant, and I enrolled in a community college. Um, and from there, I did really well. Ended up going to a state university, getting a degree in business administration, becoming a CPA. I got a job with a local public accounting firm. And then from there, I moved to the Big Four firm in Boston, and things just started happening for me. And so while I was at Ernst & Young, I worked with a large pharma company, and that's kind of where I really started appreciating the pharma, biotech, and medical industries, and felt that I wanted to pursue a career in those industries. So after spending about 4.5 years in public accounting, I wanted to really go and work for a business, just to go really deep and help grow a business, as opposed to just being a generalist. And so my first job in medical device was actually with Oxford Immunotech, and I stayed there for several years and grew my career there. And it was a company that made tuberculosis tests, and really very patient-centric, that allowed me to grow my career from a manager position to a director. And what I would say is, coming to the US, starting in a completely different country, and then basically starting from nothing in the US and getting to where I am today, which is a vice president of a publicly traded company. For me, it's proof that the American dream still exists, and you can still be successful if you really devote yourself to it and work hard. And if you're also fortunate enough to have the mentors and help that I had. And I think for me as a leader, it's important to give back to others what I've received on this journey.
Wow, thank you so much, Dorota, for sharing with us this journey. It's powerful and inspiring for sure. And you shared specific moments, as we call them sometimes, crucifix or other peak experiences. I'd love you to kind of share with us a little bit more on how you take these into leadership. You shared about the early moments in your life when in Poland, and then coming to the US, and then the crisis in the US, and several others. I'd love to know how you took those, and you obviously reacted to them in a way that brought you where you are today and being this incredible leader. Can you share a little bit more those moments, and what are the key leadership learnings that you're taking from them with you?
Yeah, I think definitely starting my career in the service industry in the US was a really great experience. I think it learned me I learned the respect for hard work, and also the humility. So I think the advice I would give to others is just be humble, be open to opportunities. When things come your way, just say yes. And I think my success has mostly been because I said yes to new assignments, new opportunities, and I definitely worked very hard throughout the years to advance within the various companies that I worked for. But I think just saying yes to new opportunities and often being uncomfortable was what got me to where I am today.
So you've led teams and organizations in a very specific domain of the company. You've done auditing, financial controller, and accounting. These are usually functions that are challenging internally. I don't know, you might disagree with me, but I actually would love to hear from you how you approach those roles internally because they are crucial roles, but again, sometimes might be perceived as challenging or controlling, etc. I'd love to get your thoughts about it.
Yeah, it's definitely challenging working in an administrative and support function in healthcare because you don't really deal directly with patients all the time, and you don't necessarily deal with customers all the time, but you have internal customers. And I think there's also a sense of mission, especially for a company that might not yet be profitable, where you know that the financial results, the financial reporting that we deliver to our shareholders is basically what helps the company survives as we get additional funding to help us continue going for a couple more years until we show profitability. So I think uh, my team has definitely had a sense of mission, and uh, working at Vapotherm specifically, a company that makes devices that help address respiratory distress. It's been an extremely interesting experience and challenging during the pandemic because we literally had to do everything we could to make as many devices as we could and deliver them to customers because it was a life or death situation. So I think in that way, it made it easier for my team to have that sense of mission and just work through, long hours, constant deadlines. It's something that we definitely deal with. And I struggle sometimes with staffing as well, because as you know, usually in support functions, there are budget concerns. So I think it's very important as a leader for you to fight for your team to make sure that you have adequate resourcing and that people are, not working 70-hour weeks or 80-hour weeks, because it's just really, as much as we're mission driven, it can have a negative impact on people's well-being and health. And so I always make it a point to tell my team to recharge after periods which are usually very busy for us, which is quarter ends, year ends, audits, things like that.
Can I double click on the mission? As you shared, it's important. Sometimes you feel you're a little bit more uh, like far from the patients and the impact you have, even though it's a great example of what you've done and the impact you obviously help actual patients through the pandemic. How do you make sure that this stays alive daily with your teams these days?
Yeah, it's definitely been very different for us after the pandemic ended. We're focusing now on a different subset of patients. So we're focusing more on COPD patients and our more traditional kind of patient groups. For example, patients who come down with the flu or RSV or similar respiratory conditions. Um, but I think what has united us together is after the pandemic ended, our company has been through several restructurings. So, during the pandemic, we worked extremely hard to make sure that the patients were served and our sales were really booming. Then when the pandemic ended, the market has really been saturated with um, respiratory support equipment. And so we've seen a really pretty steep decline in our sales in 2022. And the company went through, downsizing twice last year. And for my team, it's been especially challenging because we get to see all those changes firsthand. And I think just working together as a team and focusing on the well-being of the company and helping the company as a company survive that difficult time has been what kept us together. Because we, have a lot of influence on. We're watching budgets. We're making sure that the financial resources are being used responsibly, and we're also responsible for we're helping with fundraising and we're helping with reporting that uh, helps us continue as a business. And as we're retooling our business and making a lot of changes in it, we're also expanding globally. We're hoping that we can come out on the other side stronger. So there's still a lot of patients who need our help. And something that really drove it home for me is I visited one of our clinics at one point that was serving COPD patients, and I heard firsthand the patient who was doing the rounds around the clinic and how difficult it was for him to breathe. I think after hearing that, I feel like our mission is as much alive as it was during the pandemic. Not being able to breathe is one of the worst feelings in the world. And as long as those patients are out there, we're going to be there to serve them.
No, I love it. And really the centricity around patients, right? There is the urgency that the pandemic brought, but at the end of the day, what we do, what you do, what I do every day is really trying to improve life one patient at a time, make their life better. Tell us, you touched it a little bit. You're growing your team, you're dealing with uncertainties, with several different transformations, also business transformations, growing, funding, etc. And you have a passion for cultural transformation. Can you share with us a little bit more your learning as a practitioner and how to make sure that those transformations are successful?
Yeah, so for me, the culture transformation is really about understanding your teams and your own values and translating them into the ways that they map onto your organization's values. And so the first step you need to do is, identify the values that you have, and there are various tools available for that that I've worked through with my team. And then you also map the company's values, which usually have the mission, the values that's stated, and then compare it to what the company's actually doing to see if it's living those values. And then hopefully there's an overlap between the two. And if people understand that overlap, it's easier for them to bring themselves to work because, their own values are aligned. So for example, if somebody's value is family and well-being, you want to make sure that the organization is also providing them with time to, devote to their family and well-being. And if there's no overlap, then your people are in the wrong organization, or the organization needs a lot of work. And usually what we do as part of the cultural transformation, it's just showing whether there's overlap, and if there's no overlap, what can we do to bridge that?
I want now your first reaction that comes to mind when I tell you a word. So the first word is leadership.
Okay. I think service is what I would say.
Women in tech.
Oh,
can be more than a word.
Can be more than a word. Yeah, it brings to mind a little bit of oppression, but then also examples of some really amazing tech leaders. So I think maybe future, maybe hope.
And if I go down this one, is there a specific advice you would tell yourself when you started your career in medtech that you would now take and give it to other brilliant women?
Yes, I would say don't be afraid to take risks, and always ask for opportunities, because as women especially, I think we tend to just expect that people will notice us, and if we're doing a really good job, somebody will come to us and say, here, how would you like to be promoted, or how would you like to try this new opportunity? And I think we're sometimes afraid to ask for things. And if you go to your leader, mentor, and say, hey, I'd like more exposure to new opportunities. How about this role? Do you think I could be good in this role? They will often say yes. And the worst that can really happen is they say no, and you're exactly in the same place where you started. So I think always ask, because you might actually get what you want.
What about Six Sigma?
So Six Sigma, I've worked in a couple manufacturing type companies. So every medical device company has a manufacturing function. And I was fortunate to work for companies that were very keen on process improvement, Lean and Six Sigma. And the companies that I worked for actually put all of their employees through the process, through training when they started with the company, and really implemented this need to improve processes and understand processes from day one. And that was really helpful for me as a leader in the finance function. You might think that this is very different. It's not a manufacturing process, but it's a process. There are inputs, there are steps in the process, there are bottlenecks, and there are outputs. And so I've led several Kaizen process improvement events with my finance teams at various organizations, and we always find that brings the teams together, and it also makes their jobs more fulfilling because they can see exactly how their job and what they do interacts with other parts of the process. And we often discover that people sometimes don't talk to each other, and they just don't know that something that they're doing really hurts somebody else. And so when you bring the team together, you actually take that time to put them in a room for a couple days and walk through the process, and then maybe have a couple fun events, like a dinner or some sort of a team bonding game that really helps improve the day to day, and we see a lot of benefit from that.
Love it. You're combining cross-functional work with fun, with a purpose. I love this. The last word is spread love in organizations.
I really love this, the premise of this entire podcast, and I think we should all be doing that. So I think the way I like to spread love in organizations is by helping other people learn and grow. I think it really makes me happy when I can coach somebody and provide them with opportunities for advancement. Sometimes it's hard because that also means that they might leave your team or they might even leave your organization. But I think as a leader, you have to be happy with that. You have to really be happy with the fact that somebody might develop so much that they will no longer, be satisfied with either your department or your organization. And I think also as a leader, it is a bit of a cliche where people say leaders take all the blame and give away all the credit. I think it's very, very needed because you need to provide psychological safety to your team. So people need to be confident enough to be able to make mistakes, and they need to know that if they falter or if they make a mistake, there will be somebody there standing up for them. And so I would say that whenever an issue happens in our team, we try to focus on the solution and not point out, who did it. We might investigate why something happened, but it's not a people problem. It's usually a process problem, and so that makes it a lot easier for us to proceed. And it helps people come to you as a leader and bring up problems instead of trying to hide them.
Well, thanks for sharing this. And it's you're bringing powerful concepts around psychological safety, about recognition, teamwork, and obviously another point for your incredible leadership, grounded in resilience, as you started this podcast sharing about your story. Any final words of wisdom that you would like to share with healthcare leaders around the world?
Yes. So my words of wisdom for healthcare leaders, probably especially important for finance leaders, but I think for everyone, is if you're ever in doubt, always choose integrity and follow your moral compass. I think your reputation is more important than any kind of short-term gain. You take it with you everywhere.
Thank you so much, Dorota, for those final words and for being with me today and all this incredible chat. Thank you.
Thank you so much. My pleasure.
Thank you all for listening to Spread Love in Organizations podcast. Subscribe and connect with us on SpreadLoveIO.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. Most importantly, spread love in your organizations and spread the word around you to inspire others and amplify this movement our world so desperately needs.